Welcome to Sisterhood Check-in. I am your author and coach, Nadira Lewis, and I'm excited that it's Friday. Yes! And I'm glad that you get to spend another day with moi here on Sisterhood Check-in. I'm excited, guys, because tonight I'm going to talk about an interesting topic that I know some of you have read the title, How to Deal with Grief during the holidays. And I know for some of you, or some of us, should I say, because this time of the year can be, a pretty downer, especially when you think about loved ones that you lost. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. And I'm going to give you some solutions on what you can do to help go through those moments. So if you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you click the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification button so that you can be notified every time we upload a new video. If you are watching us via Facebook, make sure you click like and share if you have been blessed by the content that you have been receiving this far. So I'm excited. I can't wait to dig into this with you guys. But before we start, I'm going to go ahead and play a quick video to encourage you all. I love to be able to encourage, and I kind of side on a low-key side note. I kind of like create these videos. So I'd be like so excited to be able to share this. So I'm going to go ahead and share something really awesome with you guys. And I will see you right after this.
I want you to remember that God's created everything you see. He breathed it into existence. You remember when his people were caught up in slavery? He rescued them. What he did was he parted the sea, and he made a way for them, and then he delivered their enemies to them, and he unlocks wombs, and he provides water from a rock, and he provides manna from heaven, and he brought down the walls of Jericho. He froze the sun, allowing victory. He's toppled giants with tiny stones. He's brought fire from heaven. He's shut the mouths of lions. He preserved life in the belly of a well. He's fed thousands with a few loaves. He gives the weak strength. He heals the sick. He's made the blind see, the deaf hear, the mute speak, the lame walk, and he's overcome evil, and he's made a way through death for you and me by the death and the resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ, that we will live with him forever. We will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever and ever and ever. What are we afraid of? His resume is flawless. He controls everything. And he loves you.
All right, welcome back, guys, to Sisterhood Check-in, and we're going to talk about today's topic. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about how to deal with grief during the holidays. And this is something that I know a lot of people, especially like I said earlier, if you've lost a loved one, or if you just, when you think about this time of year, everybody's pretty much with their family, with their spouse, with their children, or, their significant other. And so this time of the year can be really sensitive, especially if you've lost a mother or a parent or anybody that's close to you. It can be really tough because this time of the year is when everybody starts to enjoy their family and start to appreciate their family. And so I'm going to talk about some things that we actually deal with during this time, and let you know that that there are some solutions. There are some things that I want to give you to help, because in all reality, when you're actually grieving someone that you love, there really is no quick way to deal with it. And sometimes the best way to get through it is just to get through it, because it doesn't last for a long time. It intensifies during certain times of the year, and during certain moments of our lives, certain memorable things that come up, it kind of intensifies. So there's really the solutions that I give you are really no easy solutions, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So what are some of the disadvantages of dealing with grief? And some of the disadvantages is that grief focuses on what you lost. when you're thinking about somebody that you're grieving or that you're missing, you tend to look at it as something that you've lost. So whether it's a child, a parent, a spouse, a family member, a close friend, you tend to look at it as a loss. And in some ways, it feels like that because they're no longer present with you, right? And it's hard to grasp that that they're in eternity with the Lord and their soul is there with God. It's hard to grasp that when you're missing them in the moment and you're missing them, day by day, and you're missing them during that time that you're thinking about them. It's tough. It can be really difficult to feel like or to understand or even grasp that they're with the Lord and then you just look at it as a loss. They're no longer with you. Also, grief causes you to live in the past, right? So when you think about when you lost that person, it may have been recently, it may have been a year ago, it may have been 5 years ago. No matter what the time is, it causes you to live in that moment that you felt um, that grief. So if you felt like discouraged or if there was surrounding events that happened during that time, normally when those events um are made known or you remember those things, you kind of remember everything that goes along with it. So it kind of keeps you in the past. When I think about my husband when he passed away, everything that results around that time frame that I lost him becomes like a bad nightmare because it caused me every time I think about me losing him, then it starts to feel like I start to live in it starts to make me go back to that area where I felt that way. So grief, so the second thing is that it'll cause you to live in the path. Um the next thing, number 3, is that it causes you to live in regret. You tend to think, what could I've done differently? Is there something that I could have done to maybe prevent it? I often think about what happened when, with my husband, he died in a car accident. So I tend to think a lot about, oh, what if I would have just, what if we would have woke up late that morning? Or what if, we would have did something, or I could have just, stalled. You kind of think of all kinds of ways, because you're the moment that because you start feeling like you're living in regret. So you start thinking, what could I've done, if there's anything that I could have done to kind of either prolong or prevent that event from happening. And sometimes there is just a matter of it doesn't matter. There's nothing that you could have done. I want you to know that there's nothing that you could have done um, to prevent what has happened. And what has happened, and we just have to deal with the emotional and the human side of the effect of losing that loved one. And we just have to ask God to show us and then have practical ways on how to be able to get through it, because most of the time it's just in moments. It doesn't mean that you don't still grieve, but during different times of the year it does intensify, like I said earlier. And then number 4, some of the disadvantages of it creates is it puts you into, some people, a functioning depression, a person that's functionally depressed, and a person that's actually just depressed and they just need medical attention. And when I say functionally depressed, which means you walk around, every day everybody conversate with you, you look normal, doesn't look like nothing's bothering you, you just look like, you got it all together, you don't look like it's affecting you, but deep down inside you are numb. Deep down inside you're just going through the motions. You're not living in the present. You're functionally depressed, and you're allowing the emotions that you feel from the grief to cause you to go into like a zone, or a zone where you just feel like you don't want to do anything, you don't want to be a part of anything, but you're just doing your day-to-day activities, and it doesn't look like from the external that you're actually dealing with anything, but deep down inside you're feeling like you're about to just explode, like you're about to crush, like you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders because of the grief that you feel. And then the last thing is I wanted to talk about is, it keeps you stuck in that moment. Sometimes we replay those events over and over again, about what happened, and depending on how you lost your loved one or family member, the thought of it, and how it happened, it sometimes can haunt you, especially if they were killed, or if it was, they were medically, if it was, something that, they might have been dealing with a medical illness. It just sometimes, just being stuck in that moment, just sometimes freezes you and causes you to feel like, you know what, I just don't want to live anymore. Or so for some people, you might feel like, I just can't, it's just too much. I can't make it through this moment. But I want you to know that you can get through it. And no, there's not an easy way to get through this. Sometimes the only way to get through it is to just do that. Get through it. Get through the moment, because it is a moment. And I think about that scripture where it says, uh, joy comes in the morning, and it's like, when you think about it, when you're going through it, you're not thinking about the joy. Joy comes in the morning. It's like, yeah, 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 but what about right now? Weeping endure for the night. Yeah, yeah, but I've had more than one night. I've had many nights of my weeping. So to think about joy coming in the morning, I can't fathom that, because I'm stuck in the moment. And so I want to just take this time to encourage you and let you know that I understand, and I know what it feels like to, especially during this time of year, to feel all of those, to feel, to focus on what you lost, and to live in the past, to live in regret, to deal with depression, and to be stuck in the moment. I know what that feels like, and it can be difficult. But I want you to know, whether you're watching me live or you're watching me on a replay, I want you to know that God is there to, when Jesus left, he said, I will not leave you comfortless. And he gave us the Holy Spirit as an opportunity to help us get through those moments, to help us to deal with the difficulties and the grief that we deal with. And I want you to know that that grief that you feel, you can't carry it by yourself. And the more you try to carry it by yourself, the more it starts to become heavy. It may seem like it's light at first, but trust me, over time, it's going to start to feel overwhelming. You're going to find yourself slipping. It's almost like, if you realize when you're carrying something and it seems like you got it all together, then all of a sudden it starts to get lower and lower. The next thing you know, you dropping it, because you felt like, oh, I was fine, and then all of a sudden it just dropped. So I want you to know that, that God is there with you, and he is an ever-present help. And when you need him, and when it gets to a point where it gets to be overwhelming, I want you to take some time and pray and ask God to show you how to get through that moment, and how to be able to, because like I said, it is a moment. You might, and I'm not saying you won't have many other moments, but it is a moment that has been intensified, especially now. Um, and I'm going to talk about some solutions and things that you can do to kind of help get through it. And one of the things I want you to understand, and this is one of the things before I did this show, one of the things I was really asking God is to show me how to really speak from my heart, and how to allow my experience and what I dealt with grief to maybe help somebody. So I'm hoping that some of the things and the information that God showed me about, my grief and how I got through it, I hope that it will help somebody that's watching. So one thing I want you to know is that you are allowed to cry. Allow yourself the opportunity to cry. It's okay. If you feel emotions building up on the inside of you, it's natural to want to release them. And sometimes that's the only way to release those emotions, is you just need a good cry. Sometimes you need to get it out. I had a moment 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago it was, where somebody sent me a video of my late husband in late at night, and I just happened to look at the notification, and when I seen the notification, I just bawled in tears. And the tears was a combination of feeling that grief, of feeling like I lost him, but at the same time excited that I had the opportunity to have the privilege to have him a part of my life, as for the time frame that I did. And so I want you to know it's okay to cry. Give yourself the permission to cry in that moment. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you having, it doesn't mean that you're, don't, it doesn't mean that you're not, because sometimes we don't want people to know, we don't want to feel like, we want to always, especially women, we want to feel like we're strong all the time. And crying does not mean that you're neither weak or strong. It just means that you're human. And it just means that you have opened yourself up and allowed yourself to feel the emotions that you're going to. God gave us our emotions. Don't ever let anybody make you feel like because you're crying or because you feel a certain way, and that they want you to hurry up and get over it because it's been a certain amount of time. It's been a month. It's been 2 months. It's been 6 months. Give yourself permission to feel and look at your feelings as a privilege and a gift from God. God said he cannot, he's touched by the feelings of our infirmities. So God understands when we are feeling overwhelmed and when we are overwhelmed by the grief of a lost loved one or family member, right? So give yourself the opportunity to cry. Next, I want you to do is I want you to stay productive, not necessarily. Sometimes we may say, well, yeah, I try to stay busy, but what I want you to look at, I want to give you a new way to look at it. Stay productive, because busy is kind of almost a way of avoiding and not facing the emotions that come with feeling overwhelmed. So I don't want you to I don't want you to focus on not being busy. I want you to focus on being productive. And being productive just means that you find moments each day to do what it is that you love to do, right? Because when you start operating in things that, and I'm going to really elaborate on this, because as I was thinking about this and I was writing this down, and I thought to myself, when I started to be productive and I started to do things, and I started to, do things that I love to do, like I love to encourage people, I love to help people, I love to be present in conversations, I love to be present in relationships, I love to be present because I realize the best gift that you can give anybody is your attention, right? And so when you find moments in each day that you do what you love, whether it's like 30 minutes, 15 minutes, sit outside, watch the birds, look at your social media, read your Bible, do something um towards your purpose, and you'll start to your feelings and your emotions that you feel will start to it'll start, it's almost like it starts to it be a little bit easier, because now you feel like you are now living for a purpose. You are now, because you're focusing on being productive. And I think it makes the crying, it doesn't mean that you may stop crying right away, but when you start thinking about, I have, especially if you have children, I have children to live for, I have family, I have a purpose, God has things that he has designed for me to do, it shifts your attention off of the grief moment to moment, right? So when I say stay productive, focus on what it is that that God has called you to do, and put your energy into that. And when you put your energy on that, you'll find out that the grief will become less, it'll become less and less intense. It doesn't mean that you won't still feel it, but it'll become less and less intense, and you'll start to feel like, you know what, I'm actually here. God allowed me to be here, and now I'm here. I'm going to do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do. And that's what I did. When I thought about the grief and everything that I dealt with, I felt like, wow, I could have been in that car, because circumstances surrounding the situation, I really was supposed to be in the car. And I think about the fact that God spared my life. And because God spared my life, I had to be intentional with the way I live my life. I had to be intentional and be really, not take for granted the gift that he gave me, to be here the next day, to still continue to focus on whatever it is that he called me to do. So the more I start to do whatever it is that God has called me to do, the more I start, making an impact and walking and developing into my purpose, then what happens is the grief becomes a little, it's almost like it creates a sense of gratitude. And that's the next thing I was going to talk about, is one of the ways to get through is to be grateful. Gratitude changes your perspective about so many things. When you think about the fact that it could have been you, or it could have been a family member, or it could have been, somebody else, or it could have gone another way. Sometimes just that alone will make you feel like, man, God, you didn't allow what the enemy meant, for evil. You know what I'm saying? You turned it around and made it for my good. So you didn't allow the enemy to end my life prematurely. And for that, I'm grateful. And for that, I'm thankful. And that's what we have to do. Some of us have to just take the time and think about the fact that God spared our lives, and He allowed us the opportunity to be here one more day, to do the very thing, if you don't know, but He giving you the opportunity to discover, just to find out what it is, what His plan is for your life. The Bible says the will of God is made known to us intuitively, right? So there are some things that God has put on the inside of us that we just know by intuition. We just know because it's been put there intuitively, right? So gratefulness, having an attitude of gratitude, will make you, and you can find, and I'm not talking about just only being grateful for just the, wake. Yes, we're grateful to wake up in the morning. Yes, we're grateful to have our jobs, but sometimes we have to be, in order to break that cycle of grief, we have to thank God for the time that we did have with our loved one, right? Thank God. And that's what I found myself doing, saying, God, thank you. Thank you for the children that you've given me from my husband. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be able to have to impact his life and be a part of his life for the years that we were together. And that's what you have to do. You have to look at it. If it's your parent, you have to look at it as, God, I thank you that you have given me the ability to be raised in the household with my parents and be able to have that connection and build a relationship with them. And I think the more you start finding ways to be grateful, then your mindset starts to shift from sadness to just being grateful, right? And that's what I want you to think about. And we're going to take a I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go ahead and finish talking about this subject about how to deal with grief during the holidays. And if you have some ways, if you're watching and you have some ways in which you've dealt with grief, share with it in the comments. You don't know who might be listening. You don't know who's watching. Hey, Khadija. You don't know who's watching, whether it's live or through the replay, that may really take something that you say, right, and really hold on to it. I know there's people that are watching that may have lost a parent or a loved one, and sometimes it's really hard. And I just want you to know that I'm praying for you, and that I feel you, and that I feel you. I know I may not have the same type of loss that you have, but I do know what loss feels like in terms of losing a loved one. And I know that um, I can never probably compare to the pain that you feel, but I can give you some things that may help you, that has helped me in my time. And that's what my intention is to be able to help with whatever it is, because the Bible says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, right? And by the word of our testimony. And when I think about that, our testimonials and how we got through things, you'd be amazed. You may never meet the people that may hear from you, hear your testimony, hear how you've gone through, and may feel like, man, you may never, ever, ever have a chance to have a conversation with them. But once they know your story, you would be amazed at how much that may have changed somebody's life. So I want you to take some time and really just put in the comments, if you're watching, and just encourage somebody, let them know that you understand and that you're praying for them. And while you're doing that, we'll be right back after this. Yeah. Author, life, and business coach, founder of the Becoming a Woman of Proverbs Wisdom and Entrepreneur Academy. Thanks so much for stopping by our site. Make sure you check out our on-demand courses. And if you have any questions or you would like to book a call with me, make sure you click the link below and we'll go ahead and get you started on the way to becoming the best version of who you were ordained to be.
Yes, come on, shorty, let's go. Girl, I see you over there in the corner of the dance floor, and I know you're acting shy, looking at the corner of your eyes. So I pick my heart up off the floor, move my feet closer to yours, catch my breath and I say, I'm the one you're looking for, so come on.
All right, and we are back with our second half, and we are discussing today's topic about how to deal with grief during the holidays. And we talked about allowing yourself giving yourself permission to cry. It's okay to give yourself a chance to cry and to feel those emotions, because those emotions is what makes you human. We also talked about staying productive and focusing on your purpose and not necessarily worrying about being busy, because busy is kind of a way to kind of avoid dealing with or facing the reality of what you feel. But when you focus on being productive, it gives you the opportunity to look at what it is that it kind of causes you to be grateful and causes you to feel like, you know what, God, you allow me to be here. And because I'm still here, I know that I have some things that I'm doing. And when you do that, you'll start to shift your mind on what it is that you're dealing with. And then it becomes a lot easier to deal with the grief. Um, Another thing I want to talk about is laughing, right? And so I know that may seem really difficult, because who wants to laugh when they're feeling like, when they're dealing with grief? You don't even feel up to it. You just want to just sometimes crawl up in your bed, put the covers over your head, and just wish for the day to just hurry up and be done with. But laughing is good for for the emotional healing process. And when I say laughing, which means that sometimes you just have to be around somebody who just says the right thing, or just listen to somebody say something that, not something necessarily off the wall, but just says something that throws your attention to what they're saying. And it will cause you to, it will actually cause you to feel enlightened. And you'll start, and I know that's something I've done, when I've actually, there's a couple of times I've actually turned on some comedy, and I'll listen to something and I'll just start laughing, and just that laughter, or even not even comedy. I'll even think about a video that maybe um my loved one, my husband was involved in, that he did, because he was always funny. I will look at a video and I would just burst out laughing, and then I start realizing, wow, we had so much fun, so something, that laughter in that moment did something to me emotionally. It helped me in my process, because I realized, wow, I really did have a wonderful marriage, and for that I was grateful. And so sometimes you just need to laugh. Think about all the good times that you had with whether it's your parents or your children. And some of you may say, well, I never had that opportunity to really, experience, fun or laughter, because I may have lost a child, in giving birth. But think about all the times when they were kicking in your stomach and you were excited that the fact that they were able to, that there was movement, and that's sometimes just thinking about that and remembering that brings a smile to your face when you realize that moment when they felt alive in your belly, right? Or that moment when you was with your family member and you think about something, you look at a picture and you think about something that happened in that moment, and you took that picture and you just started to laugh and get excited because you remembered something funny. Pictures are a beautiful way to remember your spouses. So sometimes take out those pictures. During the holidays, they may not be here with you physically, but take out those pictures, go through those pictures, and remember. Memories are a blessing to us. I think we don't really. Sometimes I feel like we don't really grasp um, the privilege and the opportunity that God gave us to take pictures and to be able to go back in moments, go back in time and remember, the good times. So during this holiday season, take out those pictures, take out those album books, go through your Facebook page and remember the good times. Remember all the opportunities when you think about all the things that took place that happened in your family, whether you have one or many moments. Go back, take out those pictures and remember, you know. And then the next thing I want to talk about is surrounding yourself with people that love you and that you love, right? Remind yourself of all the positive people that you have in your life and take advantage of their loving care and support. You have family members and you have friends, close family members and friends that love you and care for you and want to be there to support you. So, surround yourself with them. And, I know for me, it helps when I have my close family and friends around because it helps me to cope and to help me to deal with, because sometimes being alone, you want to feel alone when you grieve and you don't want to be around anybody sometimes. Sometimes you just want it to be you and your thoughts and you and your memory. And so it's good to surround yourself around people that actually, especially if they've known your loved one, right? You can think back about all the good moments and the funny moments, that you guys had. And it does help. It helps with dealing with the grief. I love to go through my Facebook page and look at, all the pictures and videos. And though it can be very emotional too, I just being able to have the opportunity to go back and look at it and remember when those videos were recorded and what you were thinking and what was going through your mind frame during that recording, it kind of helps to deal with it. So, when I think about, my husband's page and I kept it up as a memorial, when I get to those moments where I start to feel overwhelmed, I begin to just close my eyes and just thank God for the opportunity to have those videos and pictures available to be able to look at, right? And then the last thing I want to talk about is recognizing when that grief has taken you beyond the coping part and you need professional assistance, right? And it's okay, it's okay if the grief, because I know this for a fact, and this is something that I realized that if we don't get a grasp on what we're feeling emotionally regarding the grief, that sometimes it can take us in a deep, dark place, right? And I can tell you that from experience. It'll take you in a deep, dark place if you allow it. So if you know that you're at a point in all those things that I've talked about in other ways that maybe a counselor or a family member or a friend has shared with you is not helping you to cope, sometimes it's just a matter of you just needing time, and then sometimes it's just a matter of you needing counsel. So you needing somebody to actually help you to get through those moments. So you have to, don't look at it as if you've gotten to the point to where you're not able to cope. It's okay to reach out and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this and I really need help with this, and um I need somebody to help me because I feel like I just can't go another day or another moment. It's okay. And I want you to know that it's okay, because during this time of the year, a lot of people commit suicide because they can't cope with the grief. Some people go into a deep, dark depression because they can't cope with the grief. So I want you to be able to look at your situation and realize if you're having a hard time coping, you know, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I thought I could handle this, but it's just not working. Reach out, to somebody professionally, or reach out to somebody that is close to you that you trust with your emotions. Because that's another thing nowadays. Sometimes you can go through things, but sometimes you may not feel like you can trust that person. Well, find somebody that you can trust, whether it's a best friend and your mother or a pastor, family member. Find somebody that you can trust, and they will. And sometimes having that third person there kind of helps you see things from a different perspective, because when you're just looking at it from your perspective, it does look like it's no hope. You do feel like it's the end of the world. But when you have that other perspective there, sometimes people can see things about what you're dealing with or how you're coping with the grief, can be there to say, okay, this is really this isn't looking good. We need to kind of reach out to somebody. So don't be afraid to reach out. And another thing I want to talk about is that healing emotionally after a loss, whether it's a trauma, it really takes time. It takes patience and it takes effort, right? You're never, if it's a parent, you're never gonna, I haven't lost my mom, but I have lost a parent. And it is grief. It's difficult because nobody can tell you how long to grieve. Nobody can tell you how long it's going to take. One person might be able to cope, because I won't say really get over, because I don't think you really get over somebody that's, that you lose, that you love. You just learn how to cope. You learn how to cope. Um, so I think what happens is I had to realize and come to the understanding that, what, this is going to take time. This is going to take time. It's going to take patience. So now when I look at those pictures and I look at those videos, though there's still a part of me that kind of like, especially when you're looking at it for the first time, it kind of catches you and you get that, that blinking moment in your eye. Like I said, that blinking moment, like, I'm about to cry. And then there's other moments where you start to smile because you're just so glad that you had an opportunity to be a part of their life and make an impact, and for them to make an impact on you. So just know that it takes time, and that, it's not something, and it takes patience. And sometimes you just have to be patient through the process, if it's something that newly happened. I mean, there's really not a whole lot um to rush the process. There is no rush through the process. You just have to just go through it. And whether it's during holidays or whether it's just happened, there's just no easy way to get through it. Sometimes the only way to get through it is to just get through it, right? So make sure you put in the comments and let me know, how are you dealing with grief? If you've lost somebody, let me know exactly how you dealt with grief. And I see we have some comments here. Somebody says, hey, I guess I can't see because it's they didn't give Facebook you make sure you click the link to give Facebook permission to use your name so that I can see who you are. But I guess I'll be able to see it afterwards. But hello. And then this person says, yes, laughter does doeth good like medicine. Yes, it does. And I think that's my BFF. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at it. But yes, laughter does doeth good like medicine. You be amazed at some of the things that you look at and you be like, oh my gosh, this is so funny. It's like you'll just be laughing and all of a sudden you'll realize, oh wait, I'm not even thinking about it anymore, right? And Sabrina says, hey, beautiful. Hi, Sabrina. Thank you for watching. And Sabrina says, so true. Absolutely. I love you too. I love you too, sis. Yes, cherishing the memories are healing. It is. It is. That's the privilege that we have, is being able to look back and be like, wow, that was, that person affected my life so much. We need to really, I think what it's taught me too, to appreciate the relationships that are in your life now. Because when you think about the fact, because sometimes when you're just around your loved ones, your family and your friends, you kind of sometimes just take it for granted that, oh, they're always going to be there. But the fact of the reality is, sometimes through some of these tragedies, you just don't know, it doesn't it doesn't you might be thinking, oh, I got all the time in the world. You may not verbalize it, but your heart and your actions, will do that. And so what I've realized is that sometimes we have to start slowing down in life and really learning how to appreciate. I remember my best friend said one time, and I'll never forget this, shout out to my BFF. Hey, I remember we were walking, and she said, that God was sharing with her how important it is to take time and to make time. And I remember when she said it with such conviction. I remember feeling like, is something gonna happen to me? Is something gonna happen? Little did I know that 2 months later that I would lose my husband. And I was like, wow. And when he passed, that was one of the very first things I thought about. And so what I've realized is that sometimes, especially when we're goal driven and we're trying to focus, we just have to make sure that as we're pursuing our goals and dreams, that we don't forget to live and be present in today. It doesn't mean you can't plan for tomorrow, but being present today. And Sabrina said, I cope by staying busy and accomplishing what my family members that have gone on wanted me to do for myself. Yeah, like you kind of start to, when you start to live purposely, as I said, it kind of shifts your emotions to, okay, I know that this person, I know that, my parent or loved one is with the Lord now. So I have to make sure that, because I don't know when my time is going to be, right? So I got to make sure that I'm doing everything that God has called me to do. And that's why I encourage people to live from the inside out, find out who it is that God has called you to be, and allow yourself to be developed. Go through the development process so that you can be who God called you to be. So when you get to these moments, it doesn't mean that you won't still have these feelings, but it'll be a lot easier to cope because you're productive. You're not, trying to escape the human side of it. And all of us have our moments where we miss our loved ones, and we all cope differently. But when you are driven and you're doing the very thing that God has called you to do, it just changes it just helps to shift the grief. So even though you may still feel it, you don't dwell on it as much, right? Absolutely. Good evening. Good evening. And she says, I like that. Live purposely. Yes, Sabrina, I say purposely because busy is different. Busy just is like I said, is avoiding the human side of feeling what it is that you feel. So don't allow yourself to be busy. Be purposeful. So that way, as you said, now you're moving in motivation because look, I don't know, whether your family member was sick or whether your family member died tragically or not. Either way, it brings a reality at the moment that, wow, none of us are promised tomorrow. And some of us are prepared for the transition of our family members, and some of us are not. Like in my situation, there was no preparation. It was unexpected. And I think dealing with the unexpected was 10 times worse because I felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't even have time, but then I know those that were preparing probably felt like, wow, I've been preparing and preparing, and all of a sudden it just happened. There's no easy way to deal with it. But when you start moving purposely and you start taking that grief that you feel and you start saying, you know what? I'm going to live. I'm here today. God allowed me to still live and be here. And I'm going to make the most out of my life for my family member that passed away. And so that I can so that I can please God. So I think when you start living purposely, you start the grief begins to get easier. It may still be there and it'll come up moment to moment, but you'll start to realize, you know what? I'm getting through this. I'm getting past this, because sometimes grief will stagnate you, right? I remember when I was going through what I was going through, and I just remember feeling like numb. And every time during the holidays, I would just go back into that. I would go back into that same feeling. I start to feel numb, and I would see other people with their families, especially, husband and wives with their children. I would see them with their families, and it would trigger the feeling of loss, right? And then all of a sudden I would just burst into tears, like, oh my gosh, it's not fair, you know. But and then I used to, and then I could remember thinking like, oh my gosh, it's not fair. How come, my girls get to grow up and they don't have? And then the more I started finding out, I started beating myself up what could be or what was a loss. Now I look at it and I say, wow, I sure do miss him. Like, man, especially during this time, I miss him a whole lot more. Man, I wish he was around. But you know what? I'm grateful. And then I'll do things and the reason I'll do things to kind of shift my mindset, because I remember that feeling, and it took me. I was literally in a depression, in a mode of depression for like 2 years. And even though I looked externally looked fine, inside I was just numb. And I was just doing day to day activities. At that time, I had a baby, so I was going through the emotions of having the baby. I was just going through the motions, and like I wasn't really living, right? So I was just like, oh well, I'm just going through them because I didn't know how to feel. I was feeling. I didn't know how to go through day by day. So it was showing. It's like people would look at me and be like, oh, you're doing good, and not realizing that internally I was literally always feeling like I was about to burst in tears. And I still feel like that, during this time. Sometimes I get to moments and I get to thinking about it and I just want to burst in tears. And I say to myself, it's okay to cry. Because crying shows that I'm human and that I have the ability to remember the very thing that I had, right? Sister Audrey said the development process is so important. Yes, absolutely. You have to be able to get to that point. And development is a process. And so now I allow myself and give myself permission to cry, because crying to me shows that I'm one human and that I have the ability to remember that me crying is a privilege, because that means I still remember, right? And I used to always it's funny because when I was in high school, right, I used to always say, um, wonder how it's gonna be. A couple of friends of ours used to be like, will you remember me in 10 years? And we used to be like, yeah, we remember you. And we would laugh and joke about it. But the reality is, I don't even remember who I had that conversation with. But I remember the conversation of us talking about, will we remember each other in 10 years? And yet I have not a clue who I had those conversations with. So crying to me is a sign that I still have those memories are still vivid, and that it's a privilege. It's like a movie replaying in my mind, something that I can hold on to and I can always keep hidden in my heart, right? And it's something that's etched on my heart that I can just replay as much as possible. But when you start shifting your mindset to say, you know what, after a time, because it is time, there's no you're not going to be able to do this in the matter of like that. It's going to take time. There's no way around time. It's just no way around it. But when you allow time to pass and you start to realize that, wow, those memories are vivid realities and proof that I lived and that I experienced this person's presence, you start to look at things a little bit differently. Now you look at those memories and you start to cherish them, and it starts to help you. It apply to your relationships now. When you get around people now, you think, well, I didn't have this person for a long period of time, or I may have had them for a long period of time and didn't realize this was going to happen. So now I'm going to be more intentional with my relationships now. I'm going to make sure that I appreciate and that I'm present, because the problem is, in a lot of our relationships with people, even our loved ones, right, is that we fail to be present. And when we fail to be present, what happens is when we experience that loss, most of the time we're dealing with regret. Wish I could have, would have, should have, did, because we're not present, especially now. So I think for me, losing my husband helped me to realize how important it is to be present, in my friends and in my family's life. And I'm not talking about present as far as just being there, but being there emotionally, being there physically, being there spiritually. We tend to think that, oh, I'm just gonna be there, I'm just a phone call away. That's great, but sometimes just nothing replaces that physical human touch. And me and my best friend talk about this all the time. Like, we give each other virtual hugs and we say, there's nothing like holding and embracing that person. And so sometimes we just have to just look at the relationships around us and really learn how not to take those relationships for granted. and embrace being present. Sometimes, sometimes when I'm thinking about when I'm talking to my family member and I'm doing things around the house or I'm multitasking, and I had to realize that, what, multitasking, some things we just have to multitask. We just, sometimes we have to be purposeful, because, we're doing different things and we're being trying to be good stewards over our time. So sometimes you have to multitask. But sometimes you might need to just take a moment and just stop and be present. Be present, because you may not ever get that moment again, right? You may never get that moment again. So when you learn how to be present emotionally, physically, spiritually, it makes a difference, because that human interaction, there's nothing like, I mean, it's great to have video calls. It's great to be able to talk to somebody on the phone, but there's nothing that replaces the presence, the human presence of that person. And when that person in your life passes away, you don't only just miss the phone calls, you miss their presence, right? So there's something that happens when you get together as family, as loved ones. When you get together physically, there's something that take place that you just can't get always in a FaceTime call or on a phone call. Your presence, there's energy that's exchanged. There's, sometimes there's healing in hugs. You know, there's healing in just saying I love you face to face. There's healing in letting people know that I'm here with you. I'm present here with you. And so my desire is, I don't have New Year's resolutions in terms of, oh, I just want to do all these superficial goals. My thing is, because I have decided to live purposefully, that I want to be intentional. I want to be intentional in my relationships. I want to be intentional and present. I want to be present in my relationships. I want to be present even in, and that's one of the reasons why I work so hard to free myself up financially, so that I can be financially independent, so that I can trade my time, for money, so that I can be able to be there with my kids, with my girls, right? Because I know losing my husband has caused me to realize, wait a minute, let me slow down and let me embrace. Because when I was younger, I didn't have the opportunity to sit down and relax. I didn't have that opportunity, because I was always working. I was working 2 3 jobs, and I just wasn't able to be present, as much as I wanted to. But I made a decision. I said, you know what, my girls are 4 and 7, and I get to see, I get to embrace them at the age that they are now. And I get to really listen to their day. When I pick them up from daycare, I'm intentional. I'm finding out, what is your day like? What happened? And they get excited, because it's something that there's energy that takes place that kind of encourages them and make them feel like, you know what? Mommy's listening to me. And sometimes your family need that. Sometimes your friends need that. Sometimes your spouse needs that. They need your undivided attention. They need to know that you are present when you're communing with them, when you're having conversations with them. They need to know that you're present. And so that is one of the things that I have vowed to be intentional with next year. I don't have any big plans in terms of a lot of external things. I just want to increase my ability to be present. I want to increase my ability to be present, because I know if I show up, sometimes showing up is just half the battle of the encouragement. Sometimes when it comes to my best friend and my family members, sometimes when they just show up, I don't need a whole lot. Just show up, just be there. So when when she stops by, or I get to stop by our house, just her presence, we'll embrace each other, hug each other. It's like, oh, there's nothing that replaces that present hug. When I see my kids and I go pick them up at daycare, I have decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rearrange my time to make sure that I don't get so busy that I miss those moments of being present. Because like I said, when that family member passes, you don't think about what they did. You think about the time that you had with them, how many times you were present. And for sometimes you think about how many times you weren't present, right? And so I try to, as much as possible, try to have the mindset that, you know what, Nadira, no matter what goes on, tomorrow's not guaranteed to none of us, right? Tomorrow's not promised. And that we could be here today and gone tomorrow. And I just want to be intentional. I just want to make sure that I'm living every day purposefully. And purposely is not busy, being a busybody, but being purpose driven, not taking the gifts and talents that God has given me for granted, not taking the fact that I'm even able to be there to work from home as an entrepreneur for granted, right? Not taking for granted that that God has given me an influence and he's assigned people to me to my life for me to influence. And sometimes we got to look at that. You don't know how long a person's going to be in your life, and you have to stop taking for granted the influence that you have over people's life, because some people are surviving or determining whether or not they're going to be able to make that next step or not, or decide if they're going to take their life or not, based on you being faithful to what it is that God has called you to do. So make sure you focus on and check on your loved ones, check on your family members, check on your friends, and find out, make sure they're okay during this time of the year. While you're enjoying your family, while you're embracing your family, think about your loved ones and think about the people that are around you that have lost a family member, and be that support emotionally, be that support physically. Just show up and just, and give them a hug and let them know that you're there as a support. And even though they may know it, sometimes they just need to be reassured, right? So while you're celebrating your family and while you're loving and while you're opening up all your gifts and doing all the things that you would normally do on the holidays, just make sure you check on the people that are around you that are having a hard time and that are remembering, their spouses, and that they're um remembering and going through those cycles where they're living in regret and going and they're focusing on what they've lost, and they're starting to feel depressed. Because let me tell you, some of the people around you, they may look like they're functioning and they may look like they're okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are, right? The Bible says true religion is, going to visit the fatherless and the widows. And so make sure that while you're going out doing your good deeds, that you're just doing the basic human thing, and that is checking on people and being there for them and making sure they're okay, because we don't know. People smile all day long, and we don't know um exactly what people are dealing with. Yes, Santora, living purpose driven. Yes. And we don't know what people are dealing with, because people are really good at hiding how they feel. People are, like I said, with me, I was depressed and nobody knew. I was a functioning depressed person. I was still going around, I was still working, because you got responsibilities. When you got responsibilities, you're not thinking about, oh, I gotta, let me stop and focus on that. No, you're focusing on you're just trying to get through, so you're just being busy, but you're not really living, you're just functioning. And that's what I was doing. I was just functioning. And the more I started to realize, I was like, wow, I'm slipping in a dark place. And it's funny because you actually realize it. I started to say to myself, whoa, 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 this is taking me in an area that is becoming harder and harder to fight my way back from. And I didn't realize it till I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I felt like I could not, yes, absolutely, check on other people's. Yes. I started to feel like I thought I was strong. And that's what happens to strong people, right? When you're strong, you kind of feel like you got things, you got this, and people start to tend to look at you and think, oh, she's good, she's got this, ain't nothing, she's good, and not even realize that you're sinking. And so when you are present, being present will help you kind of see past that. Because when you're spending time with somebody, there's only so much that you can hide, right? There's only so much that you can hide. You might be able to smile for a little while, but somebody who has a gift of discernment, somebody who is present in who they are, will begin to look at you and begin to see that, wait a minute, something is just not right. Are you okay? Are you okay? Is something going on? Yes. Sabrina says, sometimes I need encouragement, especially since my mom passed away 2 years ago. Yes, absolutely. And I'm so sorry about that, sis. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter. Some people may say, well, this person, my loved one, passed away last year, a month ago. It doesn't matter, because when you're dealing with grief, it could be 5 years, 10 years, grief feels the same as it did back. I mean, my husband's been dead almost 6 years, And it's still, when I think about that, the pain still feels just the way it did when it happened. And the only thing is that now I have, like I said, found ways to be able to cope with it. When I start to see different things trigger my emotions about it, then I start to realize, okay, you know what? I have to live purposely so that I don't allow myself to get dragged in. I was like, wow, I didn't realize how dark grief can really take you to. So sometimes it, that's why I said it, when it gets to a point where you start to feel like, I can't pull myself out of this, reach out to people and let people know. And sometimes, there's sometimes where we just don't have the energy to reach out. And that's where it's going to really take having supportive family members and friends to say, you know what, because not everybody's perfect. Not everybody can read your mind. Right. And sometimes that's what we want. We want people to say, can't you tell I'm dying? Can't you tell I'm screaming for help? And the reality is, sometimes we just don't know. We just don't know. And I want the family members and the friends, the supportive friends, to understand that, don't beat yourself up if sometimes you just didn't know. If somebody may have died or committed suicide, sometimes you just don't know. And sometimes, people will make us feel like, well, you should have known. Well, we're not mind readers, we're not God. And unless the Lord reveals it to us, or unless we are around that person, sometimes people deal with stuff and you just don't know. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the gift of discernment to know. It just means that you just don't know. And sometimes maybe God didn't reveal it to you. And you have to be okay with that. Because I know for me, one of the things that used to bother me is the fact that I said, Lord, I prayed about everything else and you reveal everything else to me. But why is it that you couldn't reveal to me this? Right. And I started to beat myself up. I started questioning my relationship with God. I started questioning who I was, because I thought, like, wait a minute, how is it that I didn't know this? I get it. As women, we have this intuition. Why is it that I have an intuition about everything else, but I didn't get an intuition about this? And I was beating myself up about that, because I felt like, well, I could have been, I could have avoided this. I could have prayed, I could have prayed this and prevented this from happening. But sometimes you have to realize that something, you're not going to always have the answers, and you're not going to always be able to know, right? I didn't know. God did not let me know that this was going to happen, right? But what he did give me the opportunity was to pray. He did unction me to pray at that exact time that my husband passed away. I just didn't know what I just was praying, and I just was like, just cover my husband, wherever he is, just protect him. Didn't know that I was, as I was praying, that he was transitioning, from life to death. I mean, from death to life. Didn't know. And so sometimes we expect that, because especially if we're believers, that we're supposed to know everything, and I didn't realize that day, all right, until when that scripture that says that God's thoughts are high, our thoughts, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and his ways are higher than our ways. I started to really understand, like, wait a minute, okay, he's sovereign. Just because I have a relationship with him doesn't mean that I get the right to basically know everything. Maybe there was a reason, that I couldn't be on the phone with him that day, because we talked every day on the phone, every night. Maybe there was a reason. And so sometimes those questions like why or what if starts to torment us, and we start to think, what could I've done, to change this? And sometimes there's nothing that you could have done. And I want you to be okay with that. Sometimes there's nothing that you could have done. I struggled with that for a long time. If only I did this, if only I did that. And the reality is that guilt of what if or what I could have done didn't change the fact that it had happened, and that it was not revealed to me. Only thing I had to do was pray, because that's when God is steps into his sovereignty, and he is just who he is, God. Some things you may not know, you know, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that. It doesn't mean that you have to know. So if you're around people and something happens as a result of you just not knowing, don't beat yourself up about it. If God didn't reveal it to you, there's a reason that maybe he may have revealed it to somebody else, right? And so as much as God has allows you to be present in people's lives, and He gives you the ability, right? He gives you the ability to be able to discern. If He doesn't give you the ability to know, then maybe you might have a moment, you might feel like, all I want, maybe God just led me to pray about that situation, right? Because we're not God. We don't take His place as God. Only He is God, and He'll reveal whatever it is that He wants. And something, like I said, in that moment, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I did have the urgency to pray, right? And not knowing what that prayer was about, and I had to, during my grief process, I grieved a little bit differently, because the Bible says we don't grieve as men that don't have hope, right? And I kind of went through a period during my grief where I was just like trying to not necessarily question God, but I was trying to figure out what happened. How come he didn't allow me to know so that I can pray against it? I was wondering, like, okay, I know we had conversations about different things, and in that moment I struggled with understanding the sovereignty of God. And so some things happen in our life just based because of the sovereignty of God. And I didn't understand that, because I felt like, as a believer, we should have all the answers, right? But guess what? Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we think that because we're a believer that we're supposed to, sometimes God will show you things, and you can't, and all you can do is pray about it, right? That's all you can do is pray. There's more things that we can do in prayer, you know, than prayer is powerful. But sometimes in praying, it doesn't mean that because things don't happen because you prayed, it doesn't mean that God wasn't listening, nor did it mean that God wasn't present. It just means that there's certain things and aspects about his sovereignty that just takes place that we just probably won't ever know until we get to heaven, right? And then all those questions that we build up as a result of the grief, and we'll say when we get to heaven, we're gonna ask God this, we're gonna ask God that. Trust me, when we get to heaven, those questions probably won't even matter anymore. It probably won't even matter. So I beat myself up about that, because I kept thinking, I'm a praying woman. How is it that, that I didn't know that? And so what I've learned in this whole process is, and I went through my moment of not wanting to be present, because I felt like I thought I really understood God, and he didn't share that with me. I didn't understand that, and I started thinking something was wrong with my relationship with God. And there was nothing wrong with my relationship with God. It was just he had gave me a peace about it over years, and all I kept hearing in my spirit was his sovereignty. Some things he just allows to happen that are outside of our control. There was nothing I could have done. There's nothing I could have done. And I had to be okay with that, because sometimes you go through survivor's remorse, and you start to feel like, oh my gosh, you spared my life and you didn't spare his life. Oh my gosh, that was me that was supposed to be there and not him. And now you start to go into this whole guilt trip of feeling like, because you survived, that, oh my gosh, I survived and he didn't. Oh my God, what? And then you go through this whole thing where you start to feel like, oh, but I want you to understand and know that it's nothing wrong with reflecting. It's nothing wrong with looking back to reflect and to be able to see and cherish those memories. Just don't allow your reflecting to cause you to go into a deep depression, right? Don't allow and you might say, well, how do I do that without going back? Because when I think about it, it puts me in a place. Well, make sure that make sure that you are doing things, keep things, like I said, making sure that you're productive, so that as you're reflecting, that you're not reflecting for a long period of time, so that you don't get stuck. Because it was, for me, I started reflecting when I was in the bed, getting ready to go to sleep. So unfortunately, I cried myself to sleep. And so for some, it might happen in the daytime. For some people, it might happen in the middle of the day. Some people, it might happen in the evening. The point I want you to get is that, don't allow yourself to grieve too long. Reflect, remember, cherish, be grateful for the memories that you have, but don't allow it to take you in a place to where you are unable to cope. And if you start to feel like, and it's funny because my heart really went out. I thought about my cousin that lost his two daughters. And I remember watching his children's mom do a video on live, right? And I was watching how she was describing the pain that she felt, and listening to her, my heart just, and she was talking about all the comments that people were giving and responding and telling her that God had a purpose. Sometimes you just got to be careful what you say. Sometimes the best thing, sometimes we think that we're fixing the person's grief by talking. Sometimes it's just good to just shut up and just listen. Just be quiet, be present, just be quiet, because sometimes that person just needs you there to bounce off, just to get it out, because sometimes that stuff gets so embedded deeply in our heart that sometimes you just need to just get that poison out, right? So sometimes when people are talking to you and they're sharing, don't try to fix them. Let them talk, let them get that poison out, let them get the emotion out, because most of the time when you get it out, you feel better. You feel like, oh, I've got that out. But what happens is we try to stop and we try to fix them and try to tell them how long they should or shouldn't grieve, and instead of just being there and just being present. So I was listening to her on Facebook Live, and I was watching her cry and grieve, and my heart was just really grieved. And she began to talk about how the comments where people were saying, yes, right, lending in ear matters, right, absolutely. And she began to talk about how frustrating she was hearing people say to her stuff like, oh, God allowed this to happen for a reason, and stuff like that. When you losing a child or you losing a loved one, the last thing you want to hear is that God is allowing this to happen for a reason. Because now for some people who don't know God, that makes them frustrated with God. And then they start to feel like, well, if God allows this to happen, well, then heck, what am I going to serve this God for if he's just allowing stuff like that to happen? So we got to be really careful with saying stuff like, God, this is all happening. Sometimes you just have to just be present and don't say anything. And so I'm watching her grieve and cry. And eventually she passed away too, because the grief was so much. I believe she died of broken heart syndrome, because oh gosh, I can't even imagine what it's like to endure the loss of your young children, at the age of 6 and 9. I just don't even want to imagine what that feels like. But listening to her grieve, I started to really pray and ask God to really give her the strength to be able to make it moment to moment, because sometimes days get to be long, and days feels like months, and I mean, days feel like weeks, and weeks feel like months, and months feel like years. And so sometimes you need your strength for just a moment. And so I began to pray, and I said, Lord, I just pray that you will give her strength to be able to get through this, because I can't possibly imagine the grief of what she's going through. And with my cousin, I cannot possibly imagine the grief that they're feeling at this moment. And so I realized that was all I could do. I couldn't be there physically, right? I couldn't reach out, and I did try to reach out with phone, but sometimes when you're going through stuff, people mean well when they call and they want to check on you and see how you're doing, but sometimes you just don't want to talk. Sometimes you don't want to have a conversation. Sometimes you just want that person just to be present and don't say anything. And so all I could do was just pray. And so sometimes if I have to offer any advice to supporting family members and friends, is that when you see a family member or a loved one and they're grieving the loss of their loved one, try a different approach. Don't always have something to say. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be present and let them know that you're there to support them. And sometimes that's all you need, because really when you're going through grief, you're just looking for somebody that you can pretty much just bounce your feelings off of. You're looking for somebody that you can just lay your head in their chest if you have to, lay your head in their arms if you have to, where you just want them to be present, to where if you feel like you can't take it anymore, you just know that they're there to support you. Sometimes that's all people need. And not everybody understands that. And so that's something I want to just kind of just help people understand is don't try to be God. Don't try to fix them. Just be present, be present and let them know that you're there. And sometimes that's more than enough. When a person knows that you are there, then in those moments when they're more likely to reach out, when they realize that it's getting too hard or it's getting tough. I remember you know when I was going through what I was going through, and of course everybody naturally wants to embrace you. Everybody naturally wants to hold you, and everybody means well. But I remember my mom and my aunt, and they were trying to embrace me, and at that moment I did not want to be embraced. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate them wanting to be there. I wanted the time to grieve in my own way. And I remember my mom feeling like afraid that I wasn't able to grieve. She was feeling like I wasn't grieving. And it's not that I wasn't grieving. I was grieving a lot of different things. And at that time frame, I just needed a moment to process everything that I was feeling at that moment, because sometimes all kinds of feelings hit you at one time, and you're spending time just trying to survive past each feeling or each moment. So you don't have the time to cater to people that really mean well, right? You don't have the time to explain your feelings of why you do or feel the way you do. You just need a moment to just process through that and say, okay, you know what, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute to brace myself. And then when you brace yourself, then you can be present and say, you know what? Okay. And so one of the things that I have learned is just be present, just be present. And sometimes in being present, the best thing you can do is just pray and ask God to show you, to be there, because he is the only one that can truly console, an individual that has lost a loved one. He's the only one that can truly console the way they'll feel satisfied being consoled. The only thing we can do is be present emotionally, present physically, and really pray and ask God to show us how to be there. And sometimes that's just enough. Sometimes we don't need you to do anything but just be there. Just sit and listen and allow me to vent, allow me to go through the different emotional ups and downs of what I feel. And then when I ask for your advice, then be present, then be ready to give it to me. When I think about Job and how Job was grieving the loss of his family, and how he had people around him and they all meant well, right? They all meant well. But what did God say in that moment? God, everything, even though the people that were giving him advice were giving the best advice that they could, right? The reality is that what Job was dealing with was way beyond anything that anybody can do to bring consolement to him. Job wanted to have that consolement, wanted to have that physical. He wanted to be able to deal with he wanted to be able to have God console him, but be able to deal with the hurt of, not only did I lose my spouse, my wife, but I lost my wife and all of my kids. I lost everything, right? And I believe that Job was trying to process everything that was happening. Like, wait a minute, hold up, because that's what happens when you lose a loved one. You go through your mind and you start figuring out what happened, what could have been, you start feeling like, what could I've done, But and the reality is that sometimes it's just nothing that you can do. But Job had a relationship with God, and God was there. He was present, and he didn't. And I love that scripture that says he's an ever present help, because I've learned in my own personal life that it doesn't matter what you go through in life, right? It doesn't matter what you feel. There's nothing like having the presence of God console you, the presence of God, even through human people that embrace the presence of God, that embrace the spirit of God, that give you a hug and say, I'm here for you, that give you that hug and say, I'm here to support you, and that there's nothing that replaces that human touch. And that's why I think touch is so powerful. That's why I think we need to do less talking and more being present, more hugging and embracing, because I don't mind this whole social media stuff, but every once in a while, I want a hug, y'all. Every once in a while, I want a hug. I want to feel human. I want to feel human hands wrapped around me. And I want to hear, I love you, sis. I'm praying for you, sis. I'm praying that God gets you through this. Sometimes that does a lot. Sometimes that goes a long way, And so that's pretty much all that I have for today. Is make sure that you're present. That is what my goal is for next year. Is my desire is I want to be present. I want to be present in my friends, in my close family and friends' lives. I want to be present emotionally. I want to be present physically, and I know it's going to be a challenge because of my schedule and me having two small kids, but I want you to know that I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to be intentional, and I'm going to ask God to show me and help me to strategize on how to do that, because I think the more present I am, I think it affects my businesses, it affects my relationships, it affects, how I do things. And so I just want you to know that I'm praying for you. And if you've lost a family member or a loved one, I just want you to know that God is an ever-present help. And that he is touched by the feelings of your infirmities, and that there's nothing wrong with feeling like of going through the emotions of missing your loved one. It's okay to cry. It's okay. Cry, get it out. And once you cry and get it out, then get up and go be a blessing to somebody else. Go be present in somebody else's life. Go be that inspiration to somebody else that may need you. They want to know, how did you get through it? What's your process? What did you do? We're so good at telling people the end of our story once we get there. But I want to know how you got there. How did you get there? So put it in the comments and tell me, how did you get through your process? And help somebody else that may be watching, that may be listening. How did you get through? I can always tell you, I made it, I made it, I made it. But that doesn't help me where I am now. How did you get through? How did you go through the emotional stagnation? How did you deal with the depression? How did you deal with those moment-to-moment situations? How did you go about day-to-day life living? Let me know. Put it in the comments and help somebody else. Let us know your process. I share with you my process, and I hope that my process has helped someone else. And I want you to do the same for somebody else. Let's bond together. This is the holiday season. Many people are going through so many different things, and I feel you. I want you to know that I feel you and that I'm praying for you. And I'm not just saying that just to be saying it. I just want you to know that I am praying for you earnestly, that God will be your comfort in this holiday season. Thank you guys for watching so much. And if you are watching again on the replay, make sure you put hashtag replay and let us know what you think. I always read your comments, and I'm always encouraged by your engagement. I'm always encouraged by listening to you, dialogue with me back and forth, because my goal is, I don't just want to talk at you. I want to talk to you, right? And I want you to talk to me too. And that's about being, and the only way that'll happen is if we're present, right? And I want to take the time to tell you guys, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting my broadcast, for being present and being present as far as engaging and talking back to me. Some of you I probably won't see in person, but I want you to know that your opinion matters to me, and that I love being able to hear from you. Hi, Gia. Oh, thank you so much, Gia. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much, guys. So, and share this broadcast. If you know that there's somebody out there, if you have a family member or a friend out there that's struggling with grief and they're dealing with it, share this broadcast and let them know that you love them and that you're praying for them, and be present. Be present. Will you do that for me this season? Be present. Be present in your family's life. Be present in your friend's life. Be present in your spouse's life. Will you do that for me? I appreciate that so much. And I will see you. Today is Friday, so make sure you watch us on Sunday with Dinner with the Coaches. We're going to have an amazing lineup. Yes, Centaur, be present. We're going to have an amazing lineup. And for those of you that may have never watched Dinner with the Coaches, Dinner with the Coaches is something that again, it's a part of being present, right? Because I believe that God created us to solve. Our life is a answer to a question in our generation, right? So I believe that God gives us solutions through the things that we survive to be able to help other people, right? So don't another aspect to look at this when you're going through grief or the loss of a family member. You survive that, right? You're still here to talk about it. You're still here to mourn about it. Just know that somebody else is going through the same thing that you're going through, right? And how you got through in your process may be what that next person needs to get through their process. So when I did Dinner with the Coaches, Thomas and I wanted to really make an impact and really take our gifts to the next level and really be able to feature other coaches and really be able to solve problems both in our life and in our business. And so one of the things that I'm going to continue doing is just being present and making sure that I'm listening. If there are some subjects or things that you want us to discuss on Dinner with the Coaches, make sure just let me know. Inbox me and let me know, because we're here, to be able to help. And I plan on, when I leave this earth, I want you guys to be able to look at these videos. I want my children to be able to look at my videos the way I look at my husband videos, and to be able to say, you know what, my mom made an impact. My mom impacted people's lives. That's what we were born to do. We were created to make an impact on our generation. So we have, some of us have gifts. I said this, last week, that some of us have gifts and talents and we have nothing to show for it. you know God has helped us he's healed us through different diseases and sicknesses, and we have done nothing with it. We're waiting for people to approve us. We're waiting for people to tell us to go, and we've been on our mark, and we've been getting set for a long time. We're running in place with the baton in our hand. Don't wait to be an impact on people around you, because you don't know you don't know who's listening and who's waiting for your story, right? To be able to make it through their situation. So don't take for granted that God is giving you another opportunity to live, and he's giving you another opportunity to be here to make an impact on the world, right? And I think the more we start to realize that, the more we'll start taking, even with how we grieve, we'll grieve differently. We'll grieve as men. We won't grieve as men that don't have any hope, right? Because we realize that we are here on assignment. And that though we may feel, we may go through the loss and we may go through the feelings, we won't grieve as those that don't have hope, because we understand that God is sovereign and that there's nothing that is going to happen to us, through us, or with us unless God has given permission for it to be. So live your life, impact the world, impact the people that are around you, right? Impact the people that are around you, and let God use you to be a blessing in somebody else's life, right? Just do it. If God put a message on your heart, you don't have to be perfect. Just do it. Just get out there and do it, right? Stop waiting for things to be perfect, because guess what? When people are trying to get through and they're trying to cope through stuff, and God has put an answer to their life situation through you, while you're waiting and waiting and waiting for this perfect way to say it, they're dying in their situation, right? And you don't want it to be that when it gets to the point where God calls you to accountability for the gifts and talents that are in your life, you're telling God, "Oh, well, I was trying to wait until I had this, or I was trying to wait for this." No. The moment you become aware of what God has placed on the inside of you, I want you to start working towards getting it out of you, right? Because when you start working on getting it out of you, people's lives are changed, and so will yours. Your life changes when you impact other people's lives too. Their lives are not the only one that's impacted. Your life is impacted too. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that as you're preparing for the holidays. Think about the people that God has called you to. Think about if you're thinking about, you know, doing something, to impact the world, whether it's free or for monetary possession, do it. Because tomorrow is not promised to us, right? And you'll get better as you do it. You'll get better as you do it. If you're waiting to be perfect or waiting for the perfect moment, don't wait. Oh, I just want to say this. Wait. Don't wait to love. If God has given you an opportunity to be able to demonstrate love in somebody else's life, then do it. Be present. Show them the love of God. Show up in everything that God has created you to be. Show up with everything. Stop giving people half of you. Stop giving people bits and pieces of you. Show up and let God stand up strong in you and be present. Be present in their lives and watch God bless you as a result. And you'll be blessed too. You'll be so excited. You'll realize that, you know what? I focus so much energy on things that really don't matter. And then you realize at the end of the day, when people are sick, when I had COVID, trust me, I wasn't thinking about what I didn't do as far as my business. I was thinking about just making it through that moment. And all I could think about is what I can do better with my life. And so when I was already working on myself, and I was already, doing some things I was already into personal development and working on some things personally, spiritually, emotionally. um and so when COVID came, I really, it was just like a eye opener for me. Like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. I need to make sure, because how I take care of myself emotionally, how I take care of myself physically, is going to affect my kids. It's going to affect my friends. It's going to affect my family. So because the people around you, the people that God has assigned to you, are impacted by your life. And so you have to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to develop into the person that God created you to be, so that you can give 100% of who God created you to be, right? It's almost like eating chicken that's been bit off, right? Nobody wants to eat a piece of chicken that's been bit off. No, we want that chicken to come up, and we want it to be full of meat, full of substance. Go through the process and allow God to build substance on the inside of you, so that when people eat from you, they can eat from a fatty cow, that they're not skimming because you didn't go through the development process to be who God created you to be. So they're not even getting a full nourishment of what they're supposed to get from you, because you're not doing your part. You're waiting for people to validate you. You're waiting for people to tell you when to move. And while you're doing that, there are people that are malnourished because they need what you have. And I say this all the time: don't die. If God is giving you something for me, don't die with my stuff inside of you. If God is giving you something for me, give it to me. Give it to me. Don't die with my stuff on the inside of you. And that's how we got to think. We have to think for the next generation and realize that God has placed something on the inside of us. And we cannot die without passing on the very thing that God has given us, because each of us created for a reason. And each of us are here to impact the people that are around us, impact the world. You know, your loved ones were there to make an impact on your life. You're there to make an impact on their lives. So if you're going to start next year, you're going to be making New Year's resolutions. I created a journal like a couple of months ago, and it's called the Becoming a Woman of Proverbs Wisdom Journal. And it's a planner and a journal. And I've been advertising it now for a couple of months. And I'm really excited about this because sometimes when we're planning our life, right? Sometimes when we're planning our life, it's difficult to get those thoughts out of our head that go back and forth in our head, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? So I'm going to do something special for you guys tonight, right? For everybody that's listening, right? I'm going to go ahead and put in the comments and tell me. I'm going to go ahead and give everybody that's watching my broadcast, I'm going to give you my digital planner. the digital planner, the Woman of Proverbs Wisdom Planner. For those of you that are grieving and still battling with the thoughts, I'm going to give it to you for free, only for tonight, right? So if you're listening to this broadcast, right, make sure tell me in the comments, just say, hey, I'm interested. Let me know you're interested, and I'll send it to you for free, because I want you to plan. I want you to be intentional with planning your life for next year. And I don't want anything to hold you back, right? And I'm going to give it to you for free. And if you feel like, you know what, if you want to sow something to me for it, or, you want to give me something for it, I'll leave that totally up to you. But I want to give it away, because I want you to be able to plan your life. And I want you to include God in your plans, right? I want you to make your plan, and I want you to think about all the things that God has brought you through. And I want you to think about all the things that bombard your mind, that just won't allow you to stop. You just can't stop thinking, because your mind is just constantly going. I want to help you through that. And now that's my gift to you. So if you're watching the broadcast, put it in the comments and let me know that you are interested, and I will send you the digital planner and journal for free. And if you feel like, you know what, Nadira, I just want to bless you for doing that, I will leave that totally up to you. But I want to go ahead and give this to you for free, because I want you to make an effort. And I want you to get those thoughts out of your head. And I want you to be able to cope with the things that are going on around you, especially during this holiday season. So thank you guys for watching. That is all that I have for today. If you guys are watching by the replay, make sure you put #replay and let me know where you're watching from and how Sisterhood Check-in has blessed you. So I'm excited. I think this was pretty different today. I'm excited to be able to come every day, every Friday, every week, and to be able to present you with everything that's on the inside of me, because I'm telling y'all, I'm not going empty. I'm letting y'all know right now. I mean, I'm not going with all this stuff on the inside of me. There are so many things that God has placed on the inside of me, and I want to make sure that I am actively pushing out that very thing that God has called me to do, so that I won't get before God and be like, well, God, I thought, I was scared, I was nervous. Because guess what? We're trying to do things perfect. Perfection comes as a result of doing it over and over and over again. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more passionate you are about being the person that God created you to be, it becomes easier and easier. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you on Sunday with Dinner with the Coaches. Have a great night and a great weekend, and I will see you later on. Have a good evening. Have you downloaded your Wisdom Digital Planner and Journal? If not, it's still time. Shop now at www.womanofproverbscoaching.com.
Let's go. When I see you over there in the corner of the dance floor, and I know you're acting shy, looking at the corner of your eyes, so I pick my heart up.
I've done some terrible things in my life,
Some of them I chose to do,
and I own these choices.
But others, I just feel like I was swept up in a series
of circumstances that didn't involve my will.
They just sort of happened to me.
I've become the culmination of those choices and circumstances.
So I guess I just need to say it.
I really need some help.
Hello, I'm Tracy Harris, and I help women in positions of leadership go from stalling to balling, taking back control of who they are so that they can create the lifestyle they desire. For more information, go to www.tracylharris.com.
Hi, I'm Sherman Q. Harrison, Herbal Naturopath. I help release individuals from a state of toxicity into natural wellness so they are able to go from feeling to healing. Book a call with me today at www.healbynature.org. Zach.
Hello, my name is Thomas Taylor III. I'm a visionary coach. I help business leaders align their dreams with their destiny so they can build a lasting legacy. So if that's you, you can reach out to me via Instagram at Thomas Taylor III, or you can follow me on YouTube at Thomas Taylor III, Tailor Your Dreams. That's Thomas Taylor III, Tailor Your Dreams. Until then, go out there and make it a great day.
I'm Cravit and I am Confidence Coach. I empower female entrepreneurs find fulfillment by awakening their confidence. Find me at I am Kayla Cravit on Instagram. Let's unleash your confidence.
I'm Nadira Lewis, author, life, and business coach, and founder of the Becoming a Woman of Proverbs Wisdom Academy. I help women take their life experiences and turn them into life lessons. I also believe that just like hurt people, transform people can transform people too. Make sure you book a call with me at www.womanofproverbscoaching.com, and I'll see you on the other side of victory.